pure solar, NavAlt is also in the hybrid solutions for applications that need high speed, long range, and heavy cargo. So we are really honored to have you here, Sandith, today. Welcome.
Thank you.
Sandeep, would you like to share a few words before we go ahead and show them, introduce them to the video?
I'm very happy to be once again the first in the first episode of your talk, and I hope you make it big. This whole purpose of sharing knowledge and tech talks, and looking back, it should give some pleasure on that. And I will try to in today's session talk about our experiences, and hopefully people who are listening might gain some benefit and transfer these into their own domain and the work they're doing. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So with that, I'm going to, before we get into the Q&A, I'm going to walk you through a video of what this is all about. If there's any issue with the audio or something, do let me know. Great. Okay, Rutuja, I guess we can begin.
Yeah.
Yes, Harsh. So, Sandit, as we saw, like India's first solar fairy, Aditya. So, what was your inspiration behind that? And it would really be helpful if you could share a few words on how it all came about.
Okay, so the idea of ferry boats did not come as a single step. It was more of a series of effort, starting with small solar boats, like a 10-passenger boat for tourism. That was in 2009, and at that time, the aim was to demonstrate that solar boats can be as fast as a normal boat, right? Because the practice then was to take an existing boat and convert by adding electric propulsion and fitting panels, whereas that is not the right way. You need to design with a solar boat design philosophy in mind. And unlike EVs, when the shift from petrol to diesel to the electric, we do not have much gain in performance due to the weight reduction or drag reduction. In boats, there is a lot, because boats are it's a fragmented industry and it's not very well designed. So the cruise boat which we did won the Limca Book of Records for the fastest solar boat in India. It was technologically great, but commercially not so great, in the sense that it didn't make. This is what a typical entrepreneur finds out when the product market fit is not there. So all this, and then some efforts in fishing boat retrofit in Gujarat. These led us to public transport, where there are three main ingredients for its success. One, the boat, ferry boat, is the asset is heavily utilized, like 10 to 12 hours per day. Then the cargo, what we call as passengers, is very light. It's about 20% of the whole boat weight. Then the speeds are moderate, 6-7 knots means 12 to 13 kilometers per hour, which is so these make it a very attractive, and that's how it led us to this public transport. And at the same time, Kerala Water Transport Department was looking at a solution to solve their issue of managing the fuel bill being higher than the revenue what they are generating from a subsidized ticket. So this challenge was thrown open in terms of a tender, and we grabbed the opportunity. That's how we got to make Aditya, and we made it happen. Yeah. Yeah. Make sense?
Yes, definitely. So, Sandith, as you mentioned that it was not a one-time journey, it evolved in steps, right? So, as an EV startup in the domain, so you must have definitely faced, or what are you can suggest some of the hurdles or challenges that you faced, or still you you want to highlight that they are major in this domain?
Yeah. So, like the like every startup, we had also faced a lot of issues, and I tried to group them into three types of issues, and some of which we still face today. Now, the first is, which every startup face, is what we call as trying to get the product market fit, getting the sales, and managing the working capital. That's a common issue across the board, which everyone faces. Right, so this involves choosing the right technology and developing the product what the market needs, then finding the customers who will buy the product, and then once you get a deal, then finding a finance to build a product, especially on things which takes a longer time, like boats take 6 to 9 months. You need to manage the working capital. That's one kind of issue which everyone faces. We also face. Now the second is which is faced by people who are in a bit more technology domain, which is more of a challenge of developing the technologies, right? So this involves a lot of engineering, right? So if you are just assembling and giving, then you don't have to put a lot of effort. But if you are trying to build something on your own, adding a technology layer, then that is one challenge which we have to go through. Like in our case, there are three essentials we had to get it right. One was to reduce the weight of the boat by half, reduce the drag of a boat to 1/3 of what is a normal existing boat, and third is to get a marine approved battery bank and powertrain installed or developed and set up. So that's the second kind of issue here. Now the third is something a startup will, or a company will face if you are trying to replace an existing system, right? So if you come up with a solution that is far better yet cheaper in terms of life cycle cost, then you have a powerful entrenched player, then you can expect some kind of resistance. So these, we also had a lot of issues, a lot of lobbies working against us to stop or delay our project. But fortunately, all the attempts at Vigilance Office and PIL did not yield results, and finally we could demonstrate the boat and its success. So, and it has been operating for the past 3.5 years. So these are some of the issues, and some of which we still have it even now.
Okay, so yeah, very well put, Sandith. Thank you so much. Harsh,
Right.
would you like to
So,
take up? Yeah.
So like you just said, 3+ years, about I think 80,000 plus kilometers and 10 lakh plus passengers. That's quite a lot of real world data, I guess. What's the sort of like from an end user perspective? Like what has been the awareness or the feedback so far, or the perspective from that perspective? What do you think? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so now end user there are two layers. One is finally the commuters, right? So they are the final end users who pay the ticket and take the ride. For them, the boat gives a far better experience in the ride, right? So very spacious interiors, comfortable seating, very silent ride, vibration free, and no smell of fuel. So it's a fantastic experience. And in Vaikam Tavanakadavu, there are many people who schedule their travel or the trips waiting for the boat's schedule, because there are 3 diesel ferries and 1 solar ferry. So they adjust the timing according. So there is no doubt from a commuter's perspective. Now the same boat will have the boat operators like the engine driver and the pilot, etc. So for them also again, because of in a typical diesel boat of continuous exposure to these diesel fumes and noise, the many of those health hazard are will not be there for people who are on duty in our ferry. And there is also a what you call as an attempt or drive to get the duty in the boat for that reason. Okay. Then there are some indirect benefit in the sense that there are many people who depend on the livelihood from clean water bodies, like the fishing community there. So they all benefit from the fact that our boat do not pump all this dirty bilges and unburned fuel into the water, unlike a typical boat. So that's the indirect benefit. Now, the most important person who benefits is finally the our client, which is the Water Transport Department. They are on record stating that they have saved about 75 lakh rupees in way of this, the saving 1.5 lakh, 1.05 lakh liters of diesel. So, and they have already announced a break even in terms of the difference in cost, and they will save for the next 17 years about 25 lakhs per year. So that's the gain for the transport sector, transport department. So that is exactly why they have ordered 6 more ferries with us, including a 100-passenger double-decker air-conditioned ferry, which should be delivered by end of this year. So this, and they have announced plan to phase out all the diesel boats in the next 5 years. So these are all clear benefits and clear data in terms. So if somebody is planning to make a diesel ferry, I mean, they must be really stupid or totally unaware.
Makes sense. So in that say on that same note, from just an operations standpoint, let's say the people who are actually operating the vehicles or the boats in this case, I'm guessing the experience is pretty seamless compared to a diesel powered. I mean, the only biggest change being that there's a battery pack now,
Yeah.
in fuel storage. So is that still a very seamless experience or?
Yeah, so we must. I mean, when people come from an auto background, we tend to forget the fact that cars are generally very well designed, the petrol and diesel. So there is very little an EV can add in terms of a board design, as well as the ergonomics and interior dashboard, as well as the information. In comparison, boards are, as because it's very fragmented market, the information of for the operator also very limited, very only very mechanical way of operating things, controlling, changing gears, etc. Compared to that, this is very simple to operate. It's all electronic steering, and it is all the information is available in your dashboard. It's easy to change the speed. It's easy to change direction. So it's very easy to use. The only thing that needed to be trained was, because you have a lot of information, you must be trained to utilize the available information. So the model which we have gone about is to give an AMC along with the boat, which means the 5-year period we will take care of the boat. So we have somebody on the boat supporting the people for any support they need in terms of understanding the data, helping them. And also we also use that to learn how to make a boat better, so that like the version 2 which is coming out will be at least 20% better efficiency. So that reason it is a win-win for both of us, for the end client as well as for us. So that's the model we have tried.
That sounds fantastic. Great. From an ecosystem perspective, marine ecosystem, as you say, is quite different from the on-road applications, right? And with this recent push for Make in India, so how do you see that coming about? What is your, like? I'm sure that right now still the supply chain, especially supply chain side of things, is still not very much local, or doesn't tend to be. How do you see that developing?
So now, for this, I will talk from two perspectives. One is the whole boat builder perspective, and two as a solution provider. Because we are there in both the space. When we built Aditya, we had to source many components from abroad, almost 60% in terms of value. But the newer boats we have now reduced this 40%, primarily driven by the lithium cells. I mean, that's from a value perspective, that is, and it's not the typical EV cells. It has to be the marine certified one, which the numbers are very limited, mostly in Europe or US and Japan as well. So that's I mean, I hope eventually it will go down to 25% where only the lithium cells remain. And if some manufacturer sets up a shop in India, which there are 2 or 3 discussions happening, like Lange and 4C, then everything will be 100% manufactured in India. Now, if you are a vendor, as in solution provider like us, there are few other things in the shipbuilding industry which is an issue that kills the concept of make in India. For example, I'll tell you. In large shipyards like Cochin Shipyard, when they are putting out a tender for propulsion service provider like us, as an electric propulsion service provider, they tend to favor a foreign player, fundamentally because if you get a complete solution from a foreign supplier, you get 100% customs duty exemption. Whereas if you buy it from a solution provider who is partially importing the raw materials and adding value like us, then for the input value, we are still paying the duty. So we will always be at a price disadvantage compared to a foreign supplier. And then on top, this Cochin Shipyard specifically have some special favoritism for foreign players by giving payment terms, difference in payment terms between an Indian supplier and a foreign supplier. They pay them money earlier, and then their payment currency is different. So there are many things which has to be corrected if the government is serious about their policy of Atmanirbhar Bharat and Make in India. And the gatekeepers of Atmanirbhar Bharat in shipbuilding, like Cochin Shipyard being so close to the Ministry of Shipping and owned by them, the gatekeeper has a net forex of 700 crore negative, and they are the gatekeepers. So how will Atmanirbhar Bharat happen in that sector? I am not very certain.
Yeah, definitely. All good points, and I think that's a challenge that gets faced by pretty much everybody who's trying to want to become Atmanirbhar, but in this dilemma that it doesn't really end up being very cost effective. I guess my follow-up question it tends to align with that, or is sort of is a follow-up to that. Like we have FAME 2. I'm sure you heard about the FAME 2 scheme for on-road applications. Do you see something similar happening for the marine industry as well? Any sort of benefits coming from a legislative perspective that will help bring more push to this industry?
Yeah, from the day of FAME 1, that was almost 3 years back, more than 3 years back when Aditya was launched, we have been trying to convince the government to remove the discrimination what the water transport faces, right, in terms of FAME. So FAME 1 didn't have any support for water transport. FAME 2, they promised, but it is not there. So there is no support for electric boats like their support for electric bike or electric autos or cars or buses, which should be there in the, I mean, there is a hand holding needed in the early stage, and that is not there in electric boat. That has to change. Unfortunately, there are not many people shouting on top of their voice like us, and we are not heard also. That is the outcome I'm saying. So we hope that will be resolved soon. Now, the second thing from a policy support, how the auto industry really took off in the last 2 decades is primarily because of financing. The auto itself acts as a primary collateral when the banks finance, right? So this is not the case in boats. So if you are to finance a boat, you need to provide another collateral, another asset. So which is very strange and very unfortunate. So if the boating has to really take off, and electric boating as well, then you need to have the banks facilitate the financing. That only will take off. And third thing, again, slightly different from auto compared which when it comes to boats is because of the timeline. Like boats usually are custom designed, custom built for the application and the location. and thereby, unlike autos, which is model itself is approved, in boats it is each boat has to be approved, right? So that's the difference in the industry, and thereby the timeline is also almost 6 to 9 months for a big ferry, etc. So many of the central government firms like Navy, Cochin Shipyard, their payment terms are extremely skewed. So they give you 100% money after you deliver the product, and that too sometimes months after. So this means that the supplier has to finance the product. So if it's an MSME or startup, you imagine how we can finance the whole boat for them, boat which costs 3 to 5 crores. How many boats can we really finance with our own capital? So this is a very skewed payment term. This has to be changed. So one thing what the Kerala government has come up with in terms of financing for startup is a scheme for purchase order finance. So they will finance 90% of the purchase order value, maximum up to 10 crore, provided the PO is from a government body or from a leading private entity. So that's a fantastic scheme, and I hope Startup India, Invest India, MSME Ministry can learn from this scheme and then scale it up to maybe 100 crore, because central government have much more money than a small state like Kerala, and they can impact firms across India. That's something that has to be done. And then again, one difference in EV is 5% GST, whereas petrol, diesel is 18, 28, and various other taxes. So there is a huge difference between the two. So electric vehicles have a lot of advantages in that. But in boats, diesel boat, electric boat, all are 5% GST. So there's no difference. So one thing they can introduce a difference is there is something called a shipbuilding subsidy, which is there for boats bigger than 24 meter. That 24 meter can be lowered for, say, electric boat, which is again something we have proposed. I hope they take it up so that there is some difference between an solar electric boat and a diesel boat. That's what we are trying for. Yeah.
Okay, great. I mean, we've sort of already figured. I mean, talked about this price difference, right? Operational cost wise, we see that these boats they tend to recover their the price difference or at the outset compared to a diesel version. Which brings me to sort of a different view on this, in the sense that, like, we talked about how it's so cost intensive, especially for a startup, with not a lot of subsidies or support happening, and that's something that's similar even in the passenger vehicle application, right, domain. And similar to that, do you see any sort of like a leasing option, or part of the powertrain being leased, or say an existing diesel boat being retrofitted, and then just the powertrain side of it being leased? Some other ways where this could, where the approach becomes easier or the entry becomes easier.
Okay. So now, from my understanding of EVs, I might be not fully informed. The EVs, without any subsidy support, it is still a struggle to achieve the economics, as in the break even. It's still a challenge today. Primarily because the taxes on the vehicle are very high. That's a different thing. But unlike that, boats per se is economical today, fundamentally because the almost 70%, especially in ferries, 70% of the energy is from the sun. So the battery sizing is much smaller. So a battery of a boat which carries 75 to 100 people is smaller than a Tesla car battery, right? So that is because 70% of the energy is from the sun, and because you're making the boat much larger than that is essential for carrying 75 people. Whereas on the top side, whereas underwater is very slender and narrow to keep the drag low. So this is only possible in water, because the size you can increase, unlike on roads you cannot. So I just want to make it clear that it is economical as it stands. However, the break-even period varies on applications because of the percentage of utilization of the sun. Like ferries is like less than 3 years. There are some applications like Ro-Ro and fishing boat, etc. It could be 3 to 5 years. And there are some very special applications like patrol boats, which strangely is very high speed, but they always run at extremely low speed because you're patrolling. And then you are running a massive 1000 horsepower engine at 10%, 20%, and kills the engine as well as the efficiencies. And if that can be a parallel hybrid, then you achieve the break even in less than 1 year. So the relative differences is more to do with the inefficiency being in the application. So, so that way, there are some, I mean, there are some applications that are very attractive and some which are still 3 to 5 years. But I only seek subsidy and support only to the extent of removing discrimination. Otherwise, it can stand on its own. It is more of an adoption level, that is on a sales level in terms of adopting by a policy push that is more needed, not necessarily directly monetary subsidy. But my issue is you do support for on road, but you are not doing on water. That discrimination is the only thing I want to remove, not necessarily that it is absolutely essential. So it's more of a financing the difference by restructuring the cost. So the leasing is one option, and that's one thing which we are looking at. We are trying to find certain financing partner to lease our boats to the end user. An experiment we are going to do is, along with Shell Foundation, we are trying to do an solar electric fishing, small fishing boat. We are trying to make 5 of them and then provide to the fisherman community, and then so that they use, and if they find it successful, it could be given as a lease model as well. So that's something we will do. There are all this business model we have to try, like we have to learn a lot from the auto industry in all these things, because they are usually far ahead in many of these things.
Absolutely. No, that's great. Yes, and yes, all avenues have to be explored before, especially when things are new.
Yeah.
Okay. One final question from our end before we move to some audience questions from participants. Where do you go from here? So, I mean, there's a certain powertrain spec range that you are supporting right now. The applications, like you mentioned, have ranged from fishing boats to passenger ferries. What's the long-term vision?
So, very one-line purpose of our company is to transform the marine transport the way Tesla has done on roads. That's our end objective. So, which means we will have to do many kind of applications in the marine segment beyond ferries, right? So, ferries we have done, which is a demonstrator. Now we have just recently launched a small passenger boat for pleasure application. This is leisure boat. So the EV powertrain is totally different from the ferry technology, because approval standards are different. It's more of a leisure application. You run 3 to 4 hours, and thereby the pricing is attractive. So you can get a 10 passenger boat, solar boat. The entry model is about 20 lakhs. So it's even attractive for an individual who want to buy something beyond a car. So that's one, and that's the that's a number game actually. That will be the one which will give us a scale. And then there are newer applications like air conditioned double-decker tourism sector, which is going to come end of this year. And then there is a hybrid high-speed boat, which will be the Asia's fastest boat, electric boat. And that's twice as fast as Aditya, which will come by next year. So that's a very interesting project. The fishing boat I mentioned, what we are working with Shell Foundation. There are about 1.5 lakh such boats in India already. I mean, the petrol versions. We want to replace that. And then every place where the ferries are there which carry passengers, there is also the one which carry vehicles. Electric ferries are already running in Norway again, but thanks to a lot of EU grants. But we are trying to make a solar, reducing the battery size so that it becomes economical right from day one. Then the petrol boats, which we are trying to convince the Navy and police to try it out. So that proposal is under approval. Fuel cell is something we are doing. Hydrogen fuel cell technology is available. Integration experience is there. The boat has been done in France already by our team. Now we have to do the ecosystem in India. Is like we have to find some big hydrogen ecosystem player, because we need the liquid hydrogen transportation, the transfer to the boat. It's beyond our capability. We need big players like Reliance, Shell, Adani, etc. to take that hydrogen space, or Indian Oil also is looking at it. And these are some of the projects. And like one thing on large ships which we are trying, which is not yet in the public domain, is the use of wind. And it works very well on seagoing ships compared to solar, because solar, there is a limit in terms of the area, so there's so much energy you can get. The wind can give you almost 30% of your thrust. But this is not like a typical sail, it's more like a cylinder. It appears like a cylinder, but it works on a Magnus effect and having a suction pump. So that's something. The prototyping and land-based testing is almost over now. Installation on the ship will happen. Hopefully next year we'll have some ships carrying this. So these are some of the things which we are planning out, so that we do something on water what Tesla is doing on roads.
Fantastic. That sounds like some plan. Okay, so I'm going to post. We have 2 or 3 questions from the audience, and I won't take way too much time of yours. So the first one is that I mean, right now you're a niche brand, right? I mean, the focus is very specific to an industry. Is there any thought of branching out into other areas, say solar storage or battery solar storage or electric vehicles even? Any other areas that you're looking at venturing?
Land-based is already a very crowded space, and I don't know if we can add any other added value which we can add. I don't know. But electric vehicles, we are not seriously considering, but we are doing some experiments. But just to test if we can get that product market fit better than a few others who have tried. But that may not happen because there are so many people trying on roads, and maybe they would do better than us. But we are doing some experiments.
Okay, okay. I'm not going to pinch you too much for information, but just hypothetically speaking, if you had to venture into a on-road application, what would be your pick? What area would be your pick?
So I will start with two-wheelers first, then go to transport in the four-wheelers rather than cars, if you ask that order.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so next one from our audience is how are you seeing the technical skill set in India? The agility of local development, right? So one area is the sourcing and supply, the other is having talent available locally to support that development. How's that? What's your experience with that?
See, for me, it has never been. I've not seen that as a constraint. So you have abundant talent in India, even within Kerala also we have abundant talent. So I don't think that has been a constraint. So and it may become a constraint if you are really on the frontier. When I say frontier is, suppose the same lithium cells like battery. If you are in the space where you are trying to find a new chemistry, for example, that is a space where you may be constrained by the talent. Right? So there are not many people who are doing deep research in different chemistries. Although IIT Madras and all is doing, there could be, if at all there is some constraint, it might be there. But we are not doing that kind of development of new chemistries or new materials, etc. Ours is more into application side. So we are trying to combine many of the existing technologies into a new product, into a new technology. And there you don't need very sophisticated, we need more practical application, practical engineering application. And there I think we have abundant talent. I have not found any issue in that as yet.
Okay, final question for you. So you said, like, you know, you have these plans of course, developing into a lot more very long-term vision. As far as development activities are concerned, right? How do you see that? Do you see everything happening in-house, or at some point, how do you see the in-house versus out being, you know, activities being or development being outsourced, like from a end user perspective? Let's just say that.
So see, I mean, there is only so much we can do in-house, right? So we have to, like, one of the step we have taken very clearly in our scaling model is we are offering our propulsion train to other boat yards, other shipyards, if they can build a boat.
Right.
So I don't think we should be constrained to keep everything in-house. There will be some certain core technologies we all will have a focus on. Like it could be a very efficient boat design, which is also one of our core area. It could be the efficient battery bank system and powertrain, which is also a core area, and the whole understanding of getting everything together. But if there is somebody else also who can do an efficient boat, so we don't find an issue in giving our efficient powertrain into that boat so that they also can make a solar boat, right? So that that is the approach we have taken, and we have reached out to many of the design houses and boatyards as a step in that direction. Just recently started in that, but even in the whole chain, many of the areas like our boat itself, although we control the design and hull form, many of the part of the boat is subcontracted, manufactured by many parties. So,
Right.
so this has to, that is the only way to scale. I mean, you need to have a lot of players, and you need to develop the ecosystem, the vendor ecosystem, right?
Yes.
So this is exactly what the great shipbuilding countries in and shipyards in Korea and Japan is us. The shipyards in India does, and they want to kill the MSME and small shipyards by doing everything, right? From small boats to aircraft carrier, they will start building, and not give it to the boatyards nearby, and then they claim that they are serving the industry. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, you have to build an ecosystem, and that is the only way you will also grow. Otherwise, you will still make one ship in a year compared to the leading players in Korea and Japan. They'll make 100 ships in a year. You will still be stuck with one per year. So that's exactly what we see in India, and that has to be changed. And we also realize that this is the only way to go forward, and that every one of us should look in that direction, work together in many areas, and try to build a product.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's very well said. It always takes a crowd to make big. Well, fantastic. I really appreciate this. I think that I mean, I'm sure for most of the participants as well, but especially, I mean, in myself, this has been a great introduction or view to an industry that we usually don't focus in our day-to-day life, right? A lot of the powertrain or components may be similar, but how they're applied and what are the challenges are I would say, are quite unique to the industry, of course. It's been absolutely fantastic session. Thanks a lot for making our first episode such a great one. I'm really thankful for you to for taking the time out, and thanks a lot. Like Rutuja, Shekhar, any comments?
Thank you.
No, this is perfect, and Sandith, you have really opened our eyes to some of the elements like the discrimination that you talked about with regards to the marine and the on road, right? And we keep on road gets all the headlines in the newspaper, and and it takes a marine to win a very prestigious award in order to come to the same page, right? So it is obviously a very challenging world as it seems. But I would like to also, think more about this ecosystem element and that you're talking about. There are a lot of incubation centers and universities which are also trying to work on that. And they also have to realize that the on-road has become saturated. It has become saturated, right? There are 100 new startups coming every month trying to make an electric two-wheeler, but there are not many who are trying to serve these niche areas, and maybe the entire ecosystem needs to refocus on how we are solving a problem across the domains and not just concentrating on one where we are just defeating each other's purpose. So, and on-road is all about who's the lowest in cost, right? Probably the range and performance come much later. It's mostly about who will give you a 2,000 rupees discount to sell the product. So again, thanks a lot, and obviously we have been keen member of the ecosystem with NavAlt, and we'll continue to do that. Also, with Gyaniki, the key element is to bring these discussions on single page and provide information. So NavAlt is also having a page on the portal where we are talking about the history of the company and also what are the latest offerings in terms of the product, and will continuously obviously keep on highlighting other areas. So marine, our intent of having a showcase area on marine was obviously inspired by NavAlt. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks again for your time. I think Harsh, do you want to conclude? So Saturday morning is well spent.